Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 5th episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast. Now, the original plan this time, after popular demand, was to watch and discuss Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, starring Tobey Maguire. But after watching the movie, we found that we had some very polarizing opinions about Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 as a movie. So instead, we decided to hold a pretty raw Socratic Smackdown about our feelings about the movie. So this is probably going to be less themes and analytical discussion as it is.
It'll be violent.
We fight over whether Spider-Man 2 is a good movie or not, bringing in all aspects of Spider-Man as a whole. So why don't we start by giving some general thoughts about the issue at hand, Hallie.
Oh, thank you. Oh, wow. Well, first of all, this is the first Spider-Man movie that I've seen before Homecoming, so my general impression of it was fairly raw, but when I was watching it, I didn't really get that, you're so angry at me right now.
I am.
I didn't derive anything except, it was very, miscellaneous almost. The movie, didn't really hit home for me. It didn't really encapsulate Spider-Man. I mean, I know we're not supposed to go down the path of actors, but Tobey Maguire compared to my impression with Tom Holland and experience with Andrew Garfield, not very satisfactory. The movie didn't stand out to me, point blank.
Okay.
Period.
Now, when I picture Spider-Man, what I don't picture is a chubby, overweight, sad man.
I'm
swing-
sorry.
Oh
I have to stop you right there. Did you see the shirtless scene? He was built. Tobey Maguire was built.
Have you seen his 3 chins? I think that
jaw is
counteracts
in
his
existence.
6-pack. But anyways, the Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2 is not Spider-Man. He's a sad shell of what people might think Spider-Man to be.
I call him Melancholy Spider-Man.
Melancholy Spider-Man.
That's my name for him.
His eyes make me want to tear up because he's always bawling in every single scene. And the movie itself, although it does have some very fun set pieces, which I do like, although some of them might be cliche. Like, I think I've seen a train superhero fight 27 times now. Perhaps that originated it. I don't really know.
It did.
It did.
It did.
This set the precedent.
It was meh. But really, James is staring daggers at me right now. I thought the movie was, it was inferior to modern Spider-Man movies. We're not going to be talking about Into the Spider-Verse today specifically. We're going to be focusing on the live-action Spider-Man. And personally, my favorite is also Tom Holland, because he actually looks like Spider-Man, makes jokes like Spider-Man, is in high school like Spider-Man, and exemplifies Spider-Man's core themes and ideas of relationships and how you have to deal with them in an interesting way that we haven't seen before.
Okay, that's... Sure.
Casey.
Anyways, I've seen Spider-Man 2 a numerous amount of times. I do enjoy watching it. It's boring, but I can enjoy watching it. Mary MJ sucks in this movie. Yeah. Just wanted to say that. Sorry, I'm not sorry. Kirsten Dunst.
Okay. It wasn't the best in this one.
And you know what? Never mind. We're not gonna go there. But she wasn't the best in any of them. But I feel Tobey Maguire's just... I have to give him credit because he did start. He did start the whole superhero movie thing. Like, Spider-Man was the first main, like, blockbuster series that kicked off the superhero craze, and so he gets credit for that. But that doesn't mean that they were necessary. Like, they don't stand the test of time. They are considerably inferior comparatively to the newer movies. Like, the newer, especially within the MCU, like, the MCU doesn't even claim it, and they claim the Incredible Hulk, so that tells you something. James is staring
So if
into
you
an
guys
empty class.
no, it's currently 3-1 on this debate.
Yeah, so I would like to start with some disclaimers.
I am wrong. Don't take my opinion at face value.
That's a very... Alright.
You can just not listen to me for the rest of this.
This
and there
might
we
be very well be our last episode.
The bands break it up. It's
Yeah,
over.
but I did the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy is what got me as a young lad, is what got me into superheroes and what got me loving Spider-Man. I loved these movies so much. I watched them over and over again countless times. And so watching it again now, I still enjoyed it very much, but I'm willing to say that part of it's probably nostalgia, right? Disclaimer number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on these movies. I'm not grown, but, you know. Disclaimer number 2. They are corny. They are goofy. They are dated, right? The CGI is not great. Acting is not A1 all around. MJ's kind of flat. Doc Ock isn't amazing as a villain. He's pretty, you know, run-of-the-mill as far as they go. But I think that the heart and the theme and the charm of this movie and how goofy and campy it is captures to me what a superhero movie should be, right? There was the whole thing with DC where everyone thought that their movies were too dark and broody and grim, and this movie is the opposite of that. Allie objected.
Not grim. Do you not remember all the scenes with the doctors and they had a whole, I think it was about
it was terrifying.
4-minute scene where these arrangement of doctors were being completely torn apart in their laboratory.
That scene was amazing. I took note of that scene.
Yes.
But it's so it's a grim setting, but the way they shoot it and the way it's acted makes it feel like a campy old horror movie with like one shot of the claw zooming and then you cut to a zoom in on the guy and he's screaming. Like it's done in a really kind of goofy way. And I think the ability that this movie has to despite its corniness and goofiness, that's disclaimer number 2. It's not from an objective standpoint, it's not an amazing movie. But I think I maintain that the charm, the heart, the themes, the way that it does Spider-Man, I think is the best that's been done. I think it's for sure better than the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield. They had their moments. They had their moments, but and I think that I liked Spider-Man Homecoming. I like Tom Holland, but I just don't think he captured the classic Spider-Man struggle and themes as good as Tobey Maguire did in Spider-Man 2.
Okay,
in
sure.
Spider-Man 2. That's what I'm talking about here.
Now, I would like to propose a little bit of a thought experiment here. Now, we all know that the first wheel was a revolutionary idea that changed the course of history. But if you put it on a modern car, it would crash and burn. And I think Spider-Man 2, although it did kick off this whole genre of superhero movies, although you did have some outliers way earlier on, like the superhero movies with Superman, but Spider-Man 2 doesn't hold up to modern movie standards, and I think although it has its very important place in history, we can't take it as being better than things like Homecoming. It is better than the Amazing Spider-Man trilogy. Anything is better than the Amazing Spider-Man
it's
trilogy.
only 2 movies. It's only 2
Oh, it's
movies.
only 2?
The third one was canceled.
Oh,
Sure
really?
was.
Okay.
I know my...
See, that's how much I don't care about that trilogy.
I know my
because I
Spider
thought it was a
facts,
trilogy.
Yeah, there are some faults with the movie. The CGI is not very good. It looks like a 2000s movie. The acting is very goofy and corny, but I think despite all the stuff that you can try and pick apart about this movie in the name of feeling like a film intellectual, I think at its heart it's pretty undeniable that the heart of the movie is there, the charm is there, and I think the themes are honestly really potent, and there are some very nice and subtle things about this movie that are not given enough credit.
Like what?
Okay, all right, for sure. What do we want? Subtle things that aren't. So, I mean, the whole movie is encapsulating kind of the timeless Spider-Man conflict about balancing your duty as a hero with your personal life, right? It's Spider-Man is getting in the way of Peter Parker's life. Spider-Man's ruining Peter Parker's life, right? That's the conflict of the movie. And I think that is one of the hottest takes we've ever had in a Spider-Man movie. Like, that theme is not really explored enough, I think. Homecoming did a little bit, and I like the whole thing with the Vulture being Liz's dad was really cool. I really liked that. That was really great. But that's as far as I can remember, that's really the only time that they kind of nail that point home. Whereas in Spider-Man 2, the whole movie is like a walking. There's not a moment in the movie that doesn't help that theme of great power versus great responsibility, you know, and that sort of thing. Right from the start of the movie, Peter's struggling to he's holding like 2 jobs, and he's getting fired, and he's out of money, and he's failing his classes, and his relationship with MJ and Harry Osborn and even Aunt May is dwindling. And you see it in a really raw way that you haven't seen before. Like his apartment is really, really crummy, and you can see that he's dirt poor. And you really see just how taxing being Spider-Man is on him in a way that you don't ever get to see before. And I just want to throw this out there, because it sort of is linked in the same way. I know that a big thing for you guys is that Tobey Maguire, he's too old to be Spider-Man.
Yes.
Is a claim that I hear being made a lot.
It's entirely true.
Like 30.
Yeah, he's not. He's in college.
This man is like 3 years away from
No,
his grave.
but
Let's be honest.
when he was playing it, he was playing like a maybe mid to early 20-year-old in his like late 30s. And I understand that was like a 2000 thing.
That's like 5 years-ish. That's not that much.
He just doesn't encapsulate...
Tom Holland is playing a 16-year-old, and he's over 21.
He was a teenager when they filmed Homecoming.
Oh, 19. Going on 20. All right.
Spider-Man has always been a vessel for teenagers and their problems.
Yes.
Except for technically Andrew Garfield's. Because what the Amazing Spider-Man series did well is they did very good at like fitting in his actual age with where he was.
Yeah, he was like senior in high school.
He's a senior in high school, and in the second one he was starting college. So he was...
But you want to know something interesting? Is that in Spider-Man 1, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, he was in high school. And
that's even worse. But...
And then he's in okay, Tobey Maguire looks old. But I think that them making him a seasoned adult in this one is a good thing.
Is he necessarily seasoned if he's not even out of college?
Okay, making him an adult in this one is a good thing. And I think it's a good thing because there's a lot more going on in your life in college than there is in high school. There's a lot more that can get messed up by being Spider-Man, right? Your relationships are getting more serious. You have to support yourself and others now. And I think I think it's better at showing how dire his situation is because he's Spider-Man, because he's an adult. Like in high school, I mean, there's still a lot you can do, but there's not as much. There's relationship problems, and Homecoming does that. Mm-hmm. Or there's maybe I failed a test or missed this school thing, and Homecoming does that. But I think that being an adult Spider-Man takes all that and does even more because he's in school, he has relationships, he also has to pay rent and live and eat, and I think by having him be an adult, combined with the already good storytelling and portrayal of the theme of Spider-Man kind of messing up Peter Parker's life, I think that's one of the main reasons why Spider-Man 2 is so strong. And that was a whole monologue. I'm sorry.
Now, one more thing, and I will shut up for a while. But if Spider-Man 2 is a movie about exploring Spider-Man's relationships, then we can judge its success based on how good the relationships in the movie are portrayed. One of the primary ones is Mary Jane. And Mary Jane is the flattest character of all time, and I feel nothing for her. And I feel nothing for her and Tobey Maguire's relationship with her. And if they nailed that, the movie would have been better. Because at its core, Spider-Man has been a character meant to explore relationships. And what Homecoming does better than that is it explores a relationship we haven't really seen all too much with Spider-Man, and that's this father figure thing with Tony Stark, a relationship that they did nail. Number one, because Robert Downey Jr. is a fantastic actor.
Yes, he
and
is.
Number two, both characters have complex motivations that drive them towards each other, which makes them clash in interesting ways.
Amen.
The only thing that Mary Jane does to clash with Peter Parker is say, oh, I'm in love with this other guy, and then she breaks up with that guy on their wedding day. Like, what are you doing, MJ?
No, yeah.
She just wanted
MJ wasn't great, but I think I don't think you're 100% spot on there. I feel like, yeah, MJ as a character is not amazing. I don't know that I'd say that Liz in Homecoming was better. You know, Liz didn't do much aside from be the Vulture's daughter, right? Let's be real. But I think that the relationship that they have, that Peter and Mary Jane have, is very potent, honestly. And especially Mary Jane, you say that she has nothing to clash with Peter, but I disagree, right? Peter is kind of, he has a lot of room for growth, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
He's very selfish in this movie, right? He thinks that I can just drop Spider-Man and then everything that I ever want as Peter Parker will come back to me. And that's very naive and selfish to think. And Mary Jane shows him that when she's like, no, like, you can't expect me to wait around my whole life for it to be convenient for you, for us to be together, right? And that's a very potent thing that's not explored very much. A lot of times it's drop everything and go be with the man of your dreams. But I think this movie, it's a very cold take for them to say, at least in the middle of the movie, like, you can't get everything you want, Peter, right? Like, even if you give up Spider-Man, the world doesn't revolve around you so much, which I think is a very interesting way of spinning the relationship. And eventually, yeah, you do see them come back around and they get together, and it's a happy ending and all that. But I think what they would do with the relationship is very fresh and interesting.
Wouldn't it make more thematic sense if he got together with one of the other girls? If he's meant to grow, then why can't he move past MJ instead of MJ eventually clinging back onto him? Because that's a good point that you made, where it's interesting how he's a very selfish person and MJ says no, but when she eventually says yes, I don't feel like it's earned necessarily.
I see what you're saying, but I think it's... I'm sorry, Casey. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Casey.
Okay. I was gonna agree with Charlie. Like, it feels like she kind of went back to him because he ended up saving her in the end. It's just extremely shallow for her to go back to him. Like, I understand, like, feeling... Like, if those feelings were still there, but they tried to really paint MJ as, like, oh, I'm being strong, I'm being independent, like, I don't care about you, Tobey Maguire, I'm going off with a James Franco. Because Harry legitimately treats her better than, like, Peter ever did. Yes, like, Harry has his problems.
We're talking about the astronaut guy, right? Because Harry was Spider-Man 1. Astronaut
Right.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't...
Okay.
Did they say his name?
James Jameson. No, John Jameson. That was his name.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I didn't know he had a name. He was
I
just
just
love
remembered.
interest number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
But see, that's just one of the focal points of the movie. Like, we don't really care that much. We don't have sentiment towards these characters in the movie. We forget their names. That should be...
He's not important as a character in his own right. His role is to impact Peter and Mary Jane. I don't think he was ever... He didn't need to be the focus.
But did we ever see a focus of Mary Jane? I mean, throughout the middle of the movie...
She sucked at acting.
I mean, we can agree with that.
Yeah.
I can agree with you.
I mean, Mary Jane did get a lot of focus. I would, well, not a ton, right? Yeah, okay.
For what ended up happening, she didn't get the focus leading up to
I want to go back to Casey's point about how it felt shallow. and how they tried to make it seem like Mary Jane wasn't interested in Peter anymore, and then she just kind of turned back to him because he saved her, right? But I don't think that's so much the case, right? She made it, I think, very clear when Peter goes back to her and is like, I'm here, I'm available, you can be with me. I think she made it very clear that, like, she likes him and she cares about him very much and would like to be with him, but she makes it clear that, like, no, I'm engaged. I made this choice, right? Because I couldn't keep waiting around for you. So I found something new, right? I think the movie never tries to hide it, that there's still a spark there. I think it makes it clear that they both are not meant to be, but they are both mutually interested in each other, but that Mary Jane was willing to put that aside because it was painful for both of them, and she moved on to someone new. And so I think her turning back to Tobey Maguire isn't so much a shallow "you saved me, I'm in love with you" as it is an "I'm gonna stop lying to myself," right? And we're gonna give it a shot. It is cliche. It's shallow, but as the first superhero movie, cliches aren't. It's cliche. It's not shallow. No, it's not shallow. I wanted to mirror what you guys say.
Episode's over.
Episode's done. I lost. No, it's cliche, but I think because this is like the first big superhero movie, I mean, it kind of sets the cliche, right? It's cliche because it's not cliche yet, right? If that makes any sense.
No, I understand. I do understand what you're saying, that at this point they didn't know if they were going to get the third movie, so they needed to wrap it up with the love comes out on top over everything.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't suck.
No, I think you guys are getting me. I think I'm being okay. I don't think it sucks. But I mean,
we're persuading him, guys.
You're not persuading me. My position is rock solid.
We'll just wait for the landslide then.
Yeah.
Wow, that was very low. I'm Charlie Heatherly. I can make puns. Okay. I think we've kind of exhausted the Mary Jane point here a little bit.
Okay, well then let's talk about villains.
Let's talk about villains.
Yes, let's talk about
all right.
villains.
And I am a man. I can be real. Doc Ock's not good, right? But that doesn't matter.
Usually for a villain in a movie, this is a literary writing technique. You want the villain to either be a foil to your superhero or in some way illustrate a theme that is in contradiction or plays off of a theme that you had currently. In this case, as you keep saying, one of the main themes in the movie is relationships. So if Doc Ock's motivations in the movie were more centered around messing up more centered around messing up Spider-Man's personal relationships, I think it would have been better. Mm-hmm. And although he does steal Mary Jane, that's sort of a Mario Bros. Princess trapped in a castle. Doc Ock could have been a more complex character, and he could have illustrated something about Spider-Man. I keep forgetting Peter's. I know, I'm horrible. He could have illustrated something about Peter's goals. Like, they worked together, right? And I don't feel like that dynamic was explored that thoroughly. Because it could have been interesting to see, like, oh my gosh, this is my... It could have been a metaphor for his work life and his superhero life coming to a head and him having to, like, choose, does he follow this passion or this responsibility that he has? And I just think Doc Ock felt like a one-dimensional villain, really.
Yeah, Doc Ock was not... I think the Vulture was better than Doc Ock. I'll say that on record, and I'm not going to turn back on that. I think the Vulture was way better than Doc Ock. And again, I'm not trying to dismiss that Doc Ock was bad, but it is a little point in that we're at the beginning, the birth of superhero movies, right? I don't think on the first major superhero sequel, they're gonna hit it out of the park with an amazing villain. MCU has a plethora of sucky villains, right? So I don't think it's 100% rock solid to be like, oh, Doc Ock is shallow, therefore Spider-Man 2 bad. Like, I think, let's be there's
Picking
a lot
apart a movie for its elements is what makes it bad. There were good villains before Doc Ock. And I don't think...
Green Goblin was better than Doc Ock.
That's fair.
just because it's a superhero movie doesn't necessarily mean that they have to start from scratch. And Doc Ock is a bad villain.
Yeah.
And I think we have to acknowledge that fact, and it definitely plays into the fact that Spider-Man 2 is not as good of a movie as it could be.
Well, that's a very different statement from what you first opened with.
Well, it's also a bad movie, but...
Okay, there we go. He's back. No, yeah, Doc Ock is not, as a character, he's not very good, but I think as a villain, he's fun to watch. He's cool. And I think we're starting to get caught up in trying to be very academic about it all, when this movie is not very academic, right? It's more, I think, about the experience of watching it, and the heart, and the charm, and the goofiness. And Doc Ock is cool to watch, right? Seeing this guy with 4 poorly CG'd robot arms, like, swinging around the city. The fight choreography with Doc Ock, the one where they're, like, standing on the bell tower and he has Aunt May, I think the choreography in that fight was really cool, right?
That's true.
When Doc Ock throws the clock arms and and Peter kind of, like, slingshots them back. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in the fight scenes. So as much as Doc Ock is not... Otto Octavius is not a great character, I think Dr. Octopus is a really cool villain. He has a lot of really cool scenes that are well choreographed and fun to watch, and just cool and intimidating, and makes you want to root for the hero. Like Hallie was saying, that scene where he kills all the doctors. That scene was bananas, right? It's crazy.
So tonally dissonant.
It was, but it was also like, what am I watching? This is... When I was watching it, my jaw dropped in a good way. I was like, this is so off the wall that I can't help but like this.
You are having The Room reaction. That's a trademark, where it's so incredibly bad that you're confused as to what's happening, so then it's good. I will admit, it's a very fun scene, but it's just, like, it just... How is that scene in that movie? You watch the rest of the movie, and you watch that scene, and... You could be equally as shocked that they're in the same movie as if you watched it, like, all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
The Room
out of the park.
And I think I just said...
That it doesn't make sense to be in there.
I think I just said that it was so corny that I liked it. So thank you for repeating my point, Charlie.
But you said it in a positive light, and I'm saying
and I still do say it,
and
I still do say it
I'm
in a
gonna strangle
positive...
you.
People love The Room. And people... Contrary to popular...
That doesn't make The Room a good movie.
Contrary to popular belief here, people love Spider-Man 2. Right, there are more video essays for Spider-Man 2 probably than any other MCU movie.
False. Thor Ragnarok got so much coverage on
maybe
YouTube.
that was a little. Maybe I was a little excessive.
That's besides the point. Somebody else talk besides James and I.
I'm getting a little.
You
Right.
guys' quarrel though, it's
I will
You got
break
anything
his
to say,
spine.
Hallie?
Do I have anything to say? Well, on the scene, does it really move the story forward? Does it really need to be drawn out that long in order to prove the point that he's dangerous?
He chopped up at least.
I mean,
like,
yeah, it shows that
14
he's
feet.
bad now. I guess
Yeah,
is the
but-
baseline point of the scene is that he's bad now.
But was
being
it a necessarily prolonged scene? Could there have been something
I think we
else?
need a discussion on Doc Ock's outfit, specifically his giant boobs hanging out all the time.
yeah, that was a little weird.
Not very intimidating to me when I see a overweight man with a trench coat. It's just a weird
Charlie, I'm
ensemble.
sure if Doc Ock was right here, and I think he would be. Let's not act like the hero, Charlie. I think he would be scared.
Saying your woods.
Look, yeah, that was weird, but I mean, I think, right, a movie is the sum of its parts, yes, but I don't think you're gonna get anywhere in convincing me that it's bad by picking apart little goofy things when I know full well
that is one of the biggest scenes in the movie.
When I know full well that this is a goofy movie, right?
But this is different than Napoleon Dynamite. This is different from that kind of charm.
Yeah.
It is,
can't
yeah,
argue
it's
the
different.
same
It's a
point.
different kind of goofy.
Both
It's
were
campy.
bad, but
It's
yeah.
campy.
Charlie.
Stop
You
disrespecting
were
Napoleon
persuaded.
Dynamite. You changed.
We have it on record saying
Our
that
viewers and our listeners
Charlie
know.
changed his mind. If you stuck around,
Viewers, I have never lied. I've only told half-truths, and my Napoleon Dynamite bit was a half-truth. I can't watch that movie.
I'm sorry, you heard his opening statement about how Spider-Man 2 is bad, and that is a fat lie. So I
That's
don't know
true.
about that one,
Actually,
Charlie.
well, if you haven't seen our Napoleon Dynamite video, go and click on
Oh
that
yeah,
and
check
then
it
come
out. A
back.
little self-promotion break. Follow us on Instagram. Like, comment, and subscribe. Click the bell. Tell us what you think, dear 3 viewers.
Yeah.
All 9 of you. Tell us what you think about Spider-Man 2 and how it stacks up to the other Spider-Man movies. But how much more is there to say on this? I think we both made our positions
I can go on
clear.
for 24 more hours.
All right,
about
so
that
maybe
movie.
we should move on to a different aspect.
Okay.
I think that we should talk more about Homecoming because we 3 think that Tom Holland is the best live-action Spider-Man.
Yes.
So if we were to properly illustrate that point, then we would need to talk about the movie that he's in.
That's very true.
Sure.
So Casey,
Well, I'm being entirely serious when I say that Homecoming is probably one of the, if not the best Spider-Man movies ever made. And here's why. They had so many different aspects that they shoved in this movie. I feel like they did a really good job of not fully doing the whole we need to retell the Spider-Man like origin story, because everyone knows like what happens. We know that Uncle Ben gets got, and we know that he's living with his Aunt May, and that's like basically what movies like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 movies, I was gonna say trilogy again, oh my gosh, and the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans did. They spent entirely too long on the origin story that we already knew, just over the span of multiple movies, which of course we didn't need. So I feel like they did a really good job in Homecoming of kind of just skipping past that and going straight into the meat and what the movie really needed to be. They have a lot of good aspects. Like they have the conflict between Peter and why did I say Vulture? Is it Vulture?
yeah,
Vulture.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
God.
Vulture.
I said Vulture and I was like, it's Falcon. It's not Falcon. Birds. I'm confused.
you got the right bird.
All right. Between Peter and Vulture and how they keep clashing, but there's a sense of respect there. Like they don't have like a personal relationship, but they have enough development on their own as characters that they're able to interact as actual people. And they also do, with what they lack in establishing a father figure through Uncle Ben, they make up with that with Tony Stark, which is a incredibly that was probably the best choice that they could have made. And I feel like just how they've developed opening up the whole new, like the newer Spideyverse, by introducing him in Civil War and then giving him like his own movie and showing him in Infinity War and in Endgame, and then now with Far From Home, they're doing a really good job of like fleshing out his character, because I feel like if we had too many movies that were just like focused on Peter Parker, like it would just turn into the previous Spider-Man movies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to give their takes on Homecoming?
Hallie, what do you think?
Of Homecoming? Gosh, the only thing I have to back off of is the impression of Homecoming that I had watching it. That was the first I'm getting a lot of hate for this. The first Spider-Man movie I've ever watched. So I know, guys. I already feel you guys creating my hate. I know. But I just remember going to see that movie and enjoying it wholeheartedly, which is something I didn't receive from this movie. You know, filmmaking is all about experience and sentiment almost, but, you know, that creation of emotion. And so that's one of the main things I got from Spider-Man Homecoming. And I didn't receive from Spider-Man 2. I just remember seeing the freshness of that movie, and I remember that being exhilarated by it, and I did not receive that from this past movie. So that's what I'm kind of comparing it to, you know? Modern towards tradition, you know?
Yeah. And I think especially after the valley of darkness that was the Amazing Spider-Man duo of movies. I think Homecoming was exactly the right move to bring Spider-Man out back into the light. The Tony Stark dynamic is really cool, and Peter ended up getting his Uncle Ben moment in Avengers Endgame. Miss you, Tony.
Wow.
So that did
spoilers.
That did come. Yeah, sorry if anyone hasn't seen Endgame
That's your
yet.
fault.
Somehow,
But they're releasing it again.
yeah, back in
go see
theaters.
it.
That's interesting. They're only doing it
Money grab.
to spite Avatar.
The money's going to the same place. So.
Yeah, you know, that's showbiz. But I think that Homecoming was good, and it was what we needed to bring Spider-Man back into the light. It was fresh and interesting, and I think they put a lot of really cool modern twists on Spider-Man. But I just think that at its core, it just wasn't as strong at delivering the themes as something like Spider-Man 2 was. I think Homecoming is a really good movie, but I just personally didn't get as much from watching it as I almost like a reverse of Hallie's situation. Like I had fun, but it was not. I didn't feel the Spider-Man-iness like I did from Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm. As a high schooler watching that movie, I think it was freshman year, it clicked with me on a level that I had rarely felt with a movie before. To me, Tom Holland was so perfectly a teenager in that film and so perfectly portrayed what it was like to be in high school during that time that it just really stuck with me. And the movie, I really do think delivers on its themes. I really do think that Spider-Man at its core has been an exploration of what a relationship is and how it can be changed by extreme circumstances. And it does it in really interesting ways, especially when you take characters that we've known and loved forever, like Tony Stark. And this is one of the advantages of the MCU, is we have past character building to go off of. When you take Tony Stark and you bring him in, you get both his personal trauma mixed with Peter's personal trauma, and they connect in a way that is very realistic and incredibly endearing. And the ending in that movie where Tony tries to give him a chance in the Avengers, and then Peter says, no, I think I should focus on high school and my friends, was really awesome. And really, I didn't think it was going to happen. And although it seems like an obvious twist, I was just so drawn into the movie at the time that it caught me off guard. It was a beautiful thing. And the movie explored those sorts of themes and those sorts of ideas in a wonderful way. Even with the Vulture and the fact that he was Peter's date's father, that's a lot of relationships to go through there, was a really cool twist.
Yeah, that was really cool. I like that.
To see that people other than Spider-Man also have to deal with this dual life situation was really cool and really interesting, because so often we see in the Spider-Man movies a supervillain is a supervillain. Like, Green Goblin might have been a case of it being two different characters, but in Spider-Man 2, at least, Doc Ock was... He was evil throughout the movie, and that was his only purpose. But Vulture had a defined set of reasons to do what he did, and he was a better character for it. And I just think Spider-Man Homecoming and Tom Holland as Spider-Man are superior because of the way that they explore what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man.
I see what you're saying, and I think that some of the stuff that Homecoming tried to go for was really cool. I think that Peter choosing to say small and local was really great, and it's something that was fresh and exciting, sort of like I was saying. It was like a good retelling. But I think it's kind of interesting that this movie also kind of borrows a lot of beats from Spider-Man 2. I think that's kind of important to think about. This isn't really so much of a plot-related point, but or themes-related point, but the scene where the Vulture splits the boat in half and Peter tries to hold it together, it's pretty hard to deny that that's not harkening back to the train scene.
Oh, for sure. I think it was a reference.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's an homage.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have to explore those scenes as two things trying to achieve the same end. Both of them are meant to invoke images of Christ, obviously. And the question is, which one does it better? And I think that Spider-Man Homecoming might do it better. It was I really did like the train scene in that very end part where they catch Spider-Man right as he's about to fall into the ocean.
And it's all the hands.
And it's all the hands, and then they bring him back, and that's really cool. But just the fact that the one in Spider-Man 2, that Christ imagery was brought on by not Spider-Man's own faults, while in the other one it was. And Tom Holland didn't have to go on that boat. He didn't have to do what he did. And it's more powerful to see that his faults directly lead to him nearly, dying and having to do this incredibly heroic thing. And just something always gets me about heroes being bad at their jobs, or main characters failing to do what they've always set out to do. So when Tom Holland's Spider-Man was far from perfect in being a superhero, which is what we always like to think Spider-Man, that was a weird way to pronounce it. We always think of Spider-Man as this perfect hero swinging around, catching all the bad guys really easily. Tom Holland delivers a side of that we haven't necessarily seen, where it's difficult. You got to learn how to do it. You got to learn how to be a hero. While Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is almost like just sort of lovesick the entire movie, and it's not as interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely different takes on the story, but I do feel that the train scene was better than the boat scene. I just, something about it gave a take, whereas the boat scene was more like Peter's actions have consequences. The train scene almost was a reaffirmation of Spider-Man to me. Because it comes in a pretty low point in the movie, right? Peter has just put the suit back on, I believe, and he's now Spider-Man again. Like, he's back, I think. If I'm remembering right. I just watched it yesterday.
This is rising action in the movie.
Is it? It's...
Well, so it's right after the emotional low point of the film. This is rising action.
To the climax.
To the climax, which is him and Doc Ock.
Yeah. So it's after Peter has already tried giving up Spider-Man, but he knows he can't stay away, and he's trying to get back into the whole hero gig. And I think just seeing, like you were saying, seeing all the diverse hands of New York catch Peter as he's about to fall off the train, and them sort of encouraging him, and all kind of in an unspoken agreement to keep his identity a secret. I thought that was really potent and a really beautiful way of showing that Spider-Man is needed just as much as Peter Parker is needed. And I thought that was something that, while that's not what Homecoming was going for, I think that it was a more powerful scene than just Peter's actions lead to bad things sometimes. So I do think that the train scene was stronger than the boat scene, but they're both good.
I agree. I think you've convinced me more that the train scene is better than I previously thought it was. That does not mean that it is incredibly superior to the other one, but I do agree. Both scenes are very good. And we're running out of time here, but would anyone like to get a closing argument in? Last rebuttal? Any thoughts?
Miles Morales is the best Spider-Man.
Yeah, Into the Spider-Verse is the best movie of all of them.
Out of live-action Spider-Mans, that's up for debate. Out of all the Spider-Man movies, it's Miles Morales.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to say something, but I don't want to make promises that I don't keep, so never mind.
He's writing a video essay on it, and he's going to put it out, and if you all yell at him loud enough, then he'll have to do it.
Please do. True.
It's so much work.
Make him do it.
I'll probably do it. But, I mean, yeah, you guys made a lot of really good points about Homecoming, and I think that a lot of what you said rang true. There were definitely some times where I thought to myself, I'm wrong here. Maybe no, not I'm wrong. Maybe I mean, there were times where I definitely agreed with what you guys were saying.
Oh, for sure.
Right. I mean,
same with you.
So neither movie is perfect. I do personally think as good as your guys' arguments were, I'm just still unconvinced. I still think that Spider-Man 2 is the king of Spider-Man live-action movies. But I will definitely have to rewatch Homecoming and give you guys an update.
I will too. I didn't watch Homecoming in prepreparation.
Yeah, neither did I, because we weren't planning on having a Socratic Smackdown.
No, we were just planning on this being a Spider-Man 2 showcase, or not showcase, but discussion, and then
James got aggressive.
James got aggressive.
Some three people.
He was the instigator.
He was.
We can handle this in a back alley.
That's interesting. You know, I don't know. You say that, but that's not how it looked on my end.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think we should call any other debates like this. I like Socratic Smackdown.
I like Socratic
Yeah.
Smackdown. Tell
Yes.
us if you guys like Socratic Smackdown as much or more than regular Socratic Cinema. We will be going back to our regular format for the next episode. I believe the question is, we don't know what that episode will be, so if you have any suggestions for what we should watch, then please let us know in the comments below. And like James said earlier in the video, like, comment, subscribe, click the bell,
Yeah.
follow our Instagram, Socratic_cinema. I believe that's what it is, correct?
Yes.
Yes, Socratic
Yes.
_cinema.
Socratic_cinema. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a real quick note before we leave. I know we're currently in the process of looking for other ways to expand our platform and expand our reach. So I just wanted to say again that it would mean so much to us if you guys spread the word about the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Tell anyone you know who likes movies or likes podcasts or likes both or wants something to listen to while they drive. They need background noise. That you know, any way that you guys can spread the word about us will help us and allow us to continue doing this, right? I know we're just a bunch of high schoolers.
We need money.
Yeah, no, but any way that we can spread our love of movies and discussion would mean the world to us. We're also looking at expanding onto other platforms. I know right now we're just on YouTube, and we're trying to rework our Spotify situation right now.
Yes, it's
Rework.
complicated.
It's a very long
Here's
story.
looking at you, Melvin.
But wow, that's a name drop. But if there are please let us know what platforms you would like to see us on. Spotify, iTunes. There's a podcast app on iPhone. Just let us know where we can go that will make it easier for you guys to hear us. I
And
guess.
please give us constructive criticism. It'll be the best thing for us to develop our
Yes.
podcast further.
Yeah.
What you guys want to hear.
Well, so if anyone has anything else to say, no?
I think that's all.
No, yeah.
I think we're out. Thank you guys
All
so
right.
much for watching.
Adios.
Thank you.
See you in the next episode.